"You think I'm scared?" the dark-skinned man whispered, blood running down his split lip onto his crisp white t-shirt. Three massive bodybuilders surrounded him like a pack of wolves hunting their prey. "For the last time, get out of here. The likes of you have no place in the Golden Atlas," the tallest of them growled, his biceps flexing beneath his tattooed skin. "I have the same right to be here as you do." The dark-skinned man's voice sounded firm, but fear was visible in his eyes. "Wrong answer," the second bodybuilder chuckled, clenching his fists. The room froze. No one moved. No one intervened. The cameras on their phones silently recorded what was happening. In the corner of the room, a handsome middle-aged man put down his dumbbells. His movements were unhurried, but there was a hidden power in them. No one noticed Jason Statham rise from the bench. One of the bodybuilders grabbed the black man by the throat and pushed him hard against the wall. The sound of the blow echoed throughout the hall. "Now you will understand what respect means," the attacker hissed. Statham came closer, his footsteps barely audible. "3 against 1, he said quietly, but everyone in the room heard his words. "Isn't that a little unsportsmanlike?" The bodybuilders turned around, recognition flashing across their faces, quickly replaced by contempt. "Look, a movie star decided to interfere," the largest one laughed. "What? Is it scary without stuntmen?" Statham didn't answer. Only his eyes, cold as ice, settled on the hand clutching the dark-skinned man's throat. The bodybuilder took a step forward. Mistake. What happened next, no one present could describe in detail. So lightning fast were Statham's movements. The most interesting part is coming. Stay with us to find out how it all ends. In the meantime, like and subscribe to the channel so you don't lose it. The Golden Atlas Gym in downtown Chicago was considered an elite place. It wasn't just a fitness center. It was a temple of physical perfection, where wealthy clients flocked to keep their bodies in tip-top shape. The marble floors were immaculately clean, sparkling under the designer lighting. The latest generation of chrome exercise machines were lined up in perfect order, like soldiers on parade. The air was filled with the scent of expensive perfume, mixed with the faint scent of fresh towels and the subtle hint of sweat that comes with a hard workout. The cost of an annual membership to the Golden Atlas was equal to the average salary of an office worker for 6 months, which automatically created a certain filter for visitors. Successful lawyers, doctors, businessmen trained here, and local celebrities occasionally showed up. The club's staff, dressed in elegant black uniforms with gold logos, were impeccably polite, always ready to hand over a fresh towel or offer a protein shake from the bar. However, behind the external gloss of the Golden Atlas, there was a hierarchy, unspoken rules, and clannishness that were not written about in glossy advertising brochures. Regulars of the club, who had been sharpening their bodies for years, jealously guarded their territory from newcomers. Unspoken zones of influence were distributed between groups of regular clients, and intrusion into someone else's territory sometimes led to tense situations that the administration preferred not to notice until the conflict escalated into open aggression. In the corner of the room, near the free weights area, Michael Johnson, a 36-year-old sociology professor from Northwestern University, was stationed. Dark-skinned, with a neat short beard and a calm, attentive gaze, he methodically performed exercises with dumbbells. His movements were precise, technically correct, the result of many years of training. His slender but sinewy body betrayed in him not just a fitness enthusiast, but a man for whom physical activity was an important part of life. Michael had visited the Golden Atlas for the first time just 2 weeks earlier. A colleague, an economics professor, had invited him in on a guest membership, lavishly extolling the advantages of this place over the university gym. "You deserve a little luxury, Mike. Try it for a month, and I assure you, you'll never want to go back to our university gym." Giving in to persuasion and deciding to give himself a gift in honor of his long-awaited assistant professorship, Michael signed up for a month-long membership, which hit his budget hard. The first days in the new gym left mixed impressions. On the one hand, the technical equipment was truly impressive. Perfectly balanced dumbbells, modern exercise machines with electronic sensors tracking every movement. On the other hand, Michael could not help but notice the cold looks of some visitors, the whispers behind his back, the barely noticeable tension that arose when he approached certain areas of the gym. At first, he attributed this to the usual mistrust of a newcomer, but gradually he realized that this was not the only thing. Michael arrived at the gym earlier than usual on this particular Thursday. His morning classes had been canceled because of a conference. and he had decided to use the time to do a longer workout. The gym was half empty, just a few people on the cardio machines and a couple of men at the weight racks. Michael began with a warm-up, then moved into the core workout routine he had developed for himself back in grad school. He loved the routine, the consistent, methodical movements, the controlled breathing, the total absorption in the process, the stresses of everyday life fading into the background. After completing his shoulder set, Michael headed to the free weights area to do some seated dumbbell presses. He grabbed a pair of 70-pound dumbbells, sat down on the bench, and began his first set. On his third rep, he noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. 3 large men walked into the room. They were talking loudly, laughing, greeting people they knew. It was obvious they belonged there. Brad Morrison, Kevin Schultz, and Ray Donovan were the stars of the Golden Atlas. 3 bodybuilders, competitors in regional competitions. They were exactly the type that appeared on the advertising posters of fitness clubs. Massive, sculpted bodies, perfect tans, branded clothes from famous sports brands. Brad, the tallest of them, with a shaved head and an impressive beard, worked as a personal trainer for wealthy clients. Kevin owned a small chain of sports nutrition products. Ray, the youngest of the trio, had recently won an amateur bodybuilding tournament and was now preparing for professional competitions. Their appearance in the gym was always a noticeable event. They occupied the territory as if landing on enemy shores, noisily with ostentatious confidence, demonstrating to everyone around who was the boss here. The gym staff treated them with emphatic respect, partly because of their status in the fitness world, partly out of fear of their aggressive nature. There were cases when clients complained about the trio's behavior, but the management usually limited itself to formal conversations, not wanting to lose the face of the club. Michael continued his workout, trying to ignore the newcomers. He finished his set, carefully placed the dumbbells on the floor, and paused to catch his breath. At that moment, he noticed Brad looking straight at him. There was something unkind in the bodybuilder's gaze. Michael looked away, hoping to avoid conflict. He grabbed a towel, wiped the sweat from his face, and prepared for the next set. But Brad was already heading toward him, followed by Kevin and Ray, their faces expressing a mixture of contempt and false friendliness. A dangerous combination that Michael had learned to recognize as a student. "Hey, buddy," Brad began, looming over Michael as he sat. "You're new here, aren't you?" "I've been walking for 2 weeks now," Michael answered calmly, trying not to show the tension that had begun to build up inside. 2 weeks? Brad looked at his friends with mock surprise. "Had no one explained the rules to you?" "What rules?" Michael felt his pulse quicken, but his voice remained steady. "This is an advanced area, buddy," Kevin chimed in, crossing his massive arms over his chest. "People who know what they're doing train here, not random visitors." Michael stood up slowly, instinctively drawing himself up to his full height. He was tall, about 6 feet tall, but he still looked fragile next to the bodybuilders. "The club rules don't say anything about it," he said, "and I know what I'm doing. I've been training for over 15 years. Ray, the youngest of the 3, snorted derisively. 15 years? And that's all you've accomplished?" He pointedly looked over Michael's figure. "Maybe you should try something else? Chess, for example?" Michael felt the color rise in his cheeks. He could have explained that he had never been interested in hypertrophy, that his goal was functional strength and endurance. He could have told him about his accomplishments as a long-distance runner, about the marathons he had completed. But something told him that would only add to the ridicule. "I just want to finish my workout," he said, stepping aside to walk around the group. Brad blocked his way, lightly pushing him in the shoulder. "Not so fast, Professor. We haven't finished getting to know each other yet." Michael froze. He hadn't introduced himself or given his profession. So they knew about him. They might have even made inquiries. "Where are you from?" "Small town, big ears." Brad grinned. "You know, we were thinking that a community gym might be more appropriate for someone like you. Or maybe the YMCA. They have a great program for a diverse crowd." Michael felt a wave of anger rise inside him. He knew exactly what these people were implying. He had seen it many times in his life and had learned to recognize veiled racism. "I paid for membership, just like everyone else here," he said, trying to speak calmly. "And I have the right to train in any area of the club." "Paid?" Kevin drawled mockingly. "Or did you get it through some special program, for minorities?" Ray laughed too loudly, drawing the attention of the other patrons in the room. "Maybe we should check his locker. Maybe there's something Interesting in there? Michael felt a familiar feeling wash over him, a mixture of humiliation, anger, and helplessness. It was impossible to continue training in this atmosphere. He decided to finish early today. Wait until the three of them left, or at worst, talk to the manager about a refund for the remaining days. I'm leaving, he said firmly but calmly. Please let me pass. Scared already? Brad took a step forward, closing the distance even more. He smelled of expensive cologne and testosterone. Yaron, what about your training? We could show you a few moves in a friendly way. Some other time, Michael tried to get around the three, but Ray, unnoticed by the other visitors, put his foot out, and Michael stumbled, barely keeping his footing. Oh, sorry, I didn't notice, Ray said with feigned remorse. Michael straightened up, took a deep breath, keeping his emotions in check. He looked around. Several people were watching furtively, but no one was interfering. The staff at the venue seemed to have suddenly disappeared. A classic situation. Everyone is watching, but they prefer to stay away. I just want to leave, Michael repeated more insistently. We just want to make sure you understand the rules. Brad placed a heavy hand on his shoulder, squeezing it so hard it bordered on pain. At Golden Atlas, we hold ourselves to a certain standard. We wouldn't want anyone lowering it. Suddenly, from the far corner of the room, a calm but distinct voice with a characteristic British accent was heard. In my opinion, gentlemen, you are crossing the line. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. Standing at the power frame was a middle-aged man, solidly built, with an expressive face that Michael thought was vaguely familiar. His hair was cropped, his eyes were sharp, his stance confident but relaxed. He was dressed in a simple black t-shirt and dark gray sweatpants. No designer labels or flashy bling. Brad froze for a moment, then broke into a mocking smile. Well, Jason Statham himself condescended to talk to us, mere mortals. Only now did Michael understand why the face seemed familiar to him. It was indeed a Hollywood actor, famous for his roles in action films. But what was he doing in an ordinary, albeit elite, Chicago gym? Statham walked slowly closer, moving smoothly, with the confidence of a man in complete control of his body. I don't interfere in other people's affairs, he said calmly. But when three attack one, it looks unsportsmanlike. Attacking? Kevin theatrically spread his hands. We're just talking, getting to know the new guy, explaining the unspoken rules of the club. And what are these rules? Statham asked, stopping a couple of meters from the group. Rules are for those who understand, Brad grinned. For real athletes, not for... He didn't finish the sentence, but his look in Michael's direction was more eloquent than any words. Statham nodded, as if deciding something for himself. I understand. So the rules are only for the chosen ones? He turned his gaze to Michael. Are you okay? Michael didn't expect such a direct address. He nodded. Yes, everything is fine. I was about to leave. No need, Statham said. You have every right to finish your workout. He looked back at the trio of bodybuilders. Gentlemen, perhaps you could continue your workout in another part of the room? Ray stepped forward, his face twisted in anger. Listen, movie star, you may be a tough guy on screen, but here... Statham raised his hand in a conciliatory gesture. I'm not looking for conflict. I'm simply suggesting that everyone do their job. The hall is large. There's enough room for everyone. Brad looked at Statham appraisingly. Despite his impressive size, he seemed to have no desire to test the skills of a man famous for his roles in action films. Besides, a conflict with a famous person could attract the attention of the press, which he clearly did not want. Okay, he said finally. We're being generous today, but you, he turned to Michael, remember our conversation. The Golden Atlas isn't for everyone. You'll find that out soon enough. The trio began to back away, but Ray, passing by Michael, deliberately brushed his shoulder, pushing him hard to the side. Statham reacted instantly. His hand literally shot forward, gently but firmly keeping Michael from falling. Careful, he said loud enough for Ray to hear. The gym is a dangerous place for those who don't watch their movements. There was no threat in the actor's voice, just a statement of fact. But something in his tone made Ray turn around. Their eyes met for a moment, and the young bodybuilder looked away first. Without further comment, the trio retreated to the heavyweight area, throwing disgruntled glances over their shoulders. Thank you, Michael said quietly when they were alone. But you shouldn't have. I'm used to dealing with situations like this. Statham shrugged. Sometimes even the strongest need support. He extended his hand. Jason. Michael Johnson, he replied, shaking the actor's strong hand. To be honest, I didn't expect to see you here in Chicago. I'm filming nearby, Statham said simply. A local stuntman recommended this hall. He said it had good equipment and, he paused, interesting crowd. A barely noticeable smile flashed in his eyes. Very interesting, Michael agreed. Although until today, everything was relatively calm. Have they been working here for a long time? Statham asked, nodding towards the departing trio. I don't know for sure, but they seem to be regulars here. Michael rubbed his shoulder, which had begun to hurt after the push. Well-known bodybuilders in local circles. Statham nodded, as if that explained everything. I see. Territoriality. Every room has them. He paused for a moment, then added, don't let them chase you away. That will only strengthen their conviction that they are right. Michael chuckled. Easy to say. It's not every day you have Jason Statham around to stand up for you. That's not the point, the actor answered seriously. It's the principle. You have as much right to be here as they do. Maybe even more, judging by their behavior. Michael wanted to answer something, but at that moment Brad returned. Alone without his companions. His face expressed restrained rage. Listen, movie actor, he began without preamble, addressing Statham. Maybe you're used to everyone making way for you. But here, he gestured around the room, this is my territory. I've been training here for 5 years and everyone knows me. Congratulations, Statham replied calmly. 5 years is a long time. I prefer a long-term relationship with the gym myself. Brad didn't catch the irony in his voice, or chose to ignore it. Now listen carefully. We don't want trouble with a famous person. It's bad PR for the club. But if you continue to poke your nose into things that aren't your business, we'll find a way to make you understand that we're the boss here. Statham looked at the bodybuilder with mild interest, as if studying a rare exhibit. You know what always amazes me? He said thoughtfully. People who are truly strong, physically, mentally, spiritually, rarely feel the need to demonstrate it. They don't need to prove their superiority. They just, exist. Brad frowned, trying to figure out if this was a veiled attack on him. What are you getting at? Just an observation, Statham shrugged. Nothing personal. Listen, you. Brad took a step forward, but then, as if remembering something, he stopped. You know what? It's not worth it. Enjoy your stay at the Golden Atlas. While you can. With these words, he turned and headed back to his friends, who were watching the conversation from afar. An impressive specimen of Homo sapiens, Michael remarked dryly when the bodybuilder had moved a sufficient distance away. Statham chuckled. There are worse ones. Will you continue training? Michael hesitated. The incident had thrown him off balance, and he was no longer motivated to practice. But to quit now would be to admit defeat. Yes, I suppose so, he finally decided. Just a couple of exercises left. Great, Statham nodded. I'll be nearby if anything happens. With that, he returned to his workout at the power rack, and Michael, having collected his thoughts, continued to work with the weights. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the trio of bodybuilders animatedly discussing something, periodically throwing dirty looks in his direction. But Statham's presence seemed to keep them from open confrontation. After finishing his last set, Michael carefully returned the dumbbells to the rack. He felt eyes on him, but tried to remain calm. Wiping the sweat from his face with a towel, he headed for the exit of the training area. He was only a few meters away from the locker room when Ray blocked his path. What, are you leaving already? The young bodybuilder said with feigned disappointment. And we've only just started talking. Michael noticed that Statham was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps he had moved to another area or was taking a shower. There was no support to be expected. My training is over, he answered calmly, trying to get around Ray. And ours is just beginning. Ray put a heavy hand on his shoulder, squeezing the muscles painfully. You know, we were thinking, maybe you should show us your papers. Make sure you're really a member of the club and not got in here somehow. Michael felt a wave of anger rise inside him again. Take your hand away, he said quietly but firmly. Or what? Ray leaned closer, his breath smelling like protein shake. You're going to call your star quarterback or your security? He chuckled. You think they're going to trust a black, new guy against a club veteran? Michael took a deep breath, maintaining control. He could have pushed Ray away. He could have made a fuss. But his intuition told him that this was exactly what the bodybuilder wanted, to provoke him into aggression and then make him look like the instigator of the conflict. I just want to go to the locker room, he said calmly, and I'd prefer to do it without making any noise. Ray cocked his head to the side, studying him. You know what annoys me most? Your forced politeness. That I'm educated and cultured tone. He spat on the floor. As if that makes you better than us. I never. Shut up, Ray suddenly barked, drawing everyone's attention. Don't you dare interrupt me. Brad and Kevin were already heading towards them from the far end of the room, sensing the beginning of a conflict. The situation was heating up. Listen, Michael tried again. I don't want any trouble. Let's just go our separate ways. The problems have already begun, Ray grinned. From the moment you cross the threshold of this hall. At that moment, Statham appeared from around the corner. He was not in a hurry, but there was a sense of purpose in his movements. Seeing him, Ray reluctantly removed his hand from Michael's shoulder. Everything okay? Statham asked, coming closer. Absolutely, Ray replied with a forced smile. Just seeing our new friend off, making sure he finds his way to the locker room. Statham turned his gaze to Michael. Is that so? Michael hesitated. He could tell about the provocation, about the hidden threats. But what would that change? It would only escalate the conflict and perhaps lead to more serious consequences later, when there was no protector nearby. Yes, everything is fine, he finally answered. I was just about to leave. Statham looked at him carefully, then nodded slightly. I'm done for today, too. We can walk to the locker room together. Ray chuckled, but stepped aside, clearing the way. When he and Michael had taken a few steps away, Statham said quietly, You were wise not to give in to provocation, but sometimes retreating only delays the inevitable. What do you mean? Michael asked as they entered the locker room. People like that don't stop until they get a fight back, Statham said, opening his locker. I've seen it happen hundreds of times. First petty nitpicking, then outright insults, then something more serious. Michael sighed. Maybe I should just find another hall, not so pretentious. And let them think they were right? Statham shook his head. It's your choice, of course, but personally, I never back down from bullies. Michael smiled. Your movies make it look simpler. 1 against 10, and you always win. Cinema is cinema, Statham agreed, but the principle is the same. Stand up for yourself, for your rights. Don't let yourself be intimidated. They changed in silence. Michael took a shower, feeling the warm water wash away the tension of the last hour. When he emerged, Statham was ready to leave, dressed in simple jeans and a dark shirt. Are you coming tomorrow? Michael asked, surprised at his own question. I plan to, Statham nodded. And you? Michael thought for a moment. I don't know. We need to weigh the pros and cons. I understand, Statham extended his hand in farewell. But remember, sometimes the best way to conquer fear is to face it. Michael shook the outstretched hand, feeling its strength and confidence. Thank you for your support. Seriously, it means a lot. You're welcome, Statham replied simply. Have a nice day, Michael. With these words, he left the locker room, leaving Michael alone with his thoughts. For the rest of the day, Michael couldn't stop thinking about what had happened in the gym. The events replayed in his mind over and over, sometimes causing a dull anger, sometimes a feeling of humiliation, sometimes gratitude for the unexpected support. That evening over dinner, he told his wife of 8 years, Sarah, the school teacher, about everything. Oh my God, Mike, she exclaimed after listening to the story. This is blatant discrimination. You should complain to the club's administration, and if they don't react, you should contact the Human Rights Commission. Michael shook his head. What am I going to say? That a group of bodybuilders hinted at my skin color without saying anything outright? That they invaded my personal space without using physical force? It'll be my word against theirs. And they're regulars there, maybe even friends with the management. But you can't just let this go, Sarah protested. If they feel they can get away with it, it'll be worse next time. Maybe, Michael agreed, but I'm not sure wrestling is the best option. Maybe it's smarter to just find another gym. After all, I only signed up for a month as an experiment. Sarah looked at her husband for a long moment, then sighed. You always take the path of least resistance when it comes to this. Sometimes you have to fight, Mike. I fight every day, he said quietly. Every day I prove to students, colleagues, strangers on the street that I don't fit their stereotypes. Every day I try to be better, more educated, more polite, so that no one can say, well, of course, what else can you expect from a black person? That's a fight too, Sarah, just with different methods. His wife came up to him and gently put her arm around his shoulders. I know, honey, and I admire your strength, but sometimes you have to fight back directly and unequivocally, so that people like these bodybuilders know that their behavior has consequences. Michael thought, You know, the weirdest thing about today is Jason Statham showing up. It's like the universe decided to throw me a quarterback from a Hollywood blockbuster. It's surreal, Sarah agreed, but it's nice to know there are people willing to stand up for you. Even celebrities. Yes, he behaved decently, Michael nodded. He didn't make a scene. He didn't start waving his fists like in his movies. He just made it clear that he saw what was happening and didn't approve. So what have you decided? Will you return to the Golden Atlas? Michael was silent for a long moment, then said, I think so. I'll be back. Not for the training, but for the principle. I paid for the month and I have the right to use it. Besides, he allowed himself a slight smile. I'm curious about what happens next in this story. Sarah smiled back. Just promise to be careful. These people don't sound very balanced. I promise, Michael answered seriously. No unnecessary risks. The next morning, Michael woke up earlier than usual. Classes at the university didn't start until after lunch, so he had time for a morning workout. He hesitated. Maybe he should go at another time, when the trio of bodybuilders weren't in the gym. But then he decided that would be a sign of weakness. Besides, they were unlikely to change their schedule, so sooner or later the clash would happen anyway. The Golden Atlas greeted him with its usual atmosphere of luxury and discipline. There was a new girl at the front desk who smiled warmly as she checked his membership card. The gym itself was sparsely populated. A few people on treadmills, a couple of women on leg machines, an older man working out with light weights. No sign of yesterday's opponents. Michael felt both relieved and disappointed. Part of him was actually ready for a confrontation, to stand his ground. But another part of him was glad to have the chance to practice in peace. He started with a warm-up, then moved on to the main program. Time passed. The hall gradually filled with people, but no familiar faces appeared. Not Statham, not the trio of bodybuilders. Michael was already finishing his workout when he noticed Kevin approaching him. Alone, without his buddies, he looked less impressive, but he still radiated hostility. He came back after all, Kevin stated, stopping a couple of meters away. I didn't think I'd have the courage. I paid for a month, Michael replied calmly, continuing to do the exercise, and I intend to use it. Kevin chuckled. Brave or stupid? He looked around. Your famous protector didn't show up today? I can stand up for myself, Michael replied, finishing his approach and sitting down on the bench. Really? Kevin came closer, looming over him. Adam Tana Yuritum. And it seems to me that yesterday you were ready to tuck your tail and run away, if not for the intervention of a movie actor. Michael rose slowly, drawing himself up to his full height. What do you want, Kevin? A direct confrontation? A fight in the middle of the room? For us both to be thrown out? Oh, so you know my name, the bodybuilder grinned. Have you made inquiries? I heard your friends call you that yesterday, Michael shrugged. I have a good memory. Kevin took another step forward, closing the distance to a minimum. Listen carefully, Professor. The guys and I discussed the situation and decided to be magnanimous. We will give you a chance to save face. You will tell the administration that you have decided to cancel your membership for personal reasons. They will refund your money for the remaining days, and everyone will be happy. You will find a hall more appropriate to your level, and we will forget this incident. Michael felt anger boiling inside him. What if I refuse? Then, Kevin lowered his voice to a whisper, we'll make your stay here so unpleasant that you'll want to leave yourself. And believe me, we have ways that won't leave traces and won't attract the attention of the administration. Michael met his gaze. Is that a threat? It's a promise, Kevin replied. Think about our offer. Think about it very carefully. With that, he took a step back, then turned and headed for the exit of the hall. Michael remained standing, feeling his heart pounding. He couldn't understand what had caused such aggression. Was it just the color of their skin? Or was it territoriality in its purest form? A rejection of any stranger who dared to invade their space. After finishing his workout, Michael stood in the shower for a long time, letting the hot water wash away the tension. In all fairness, he should have reported the incident to the club's management. But what would he say? Your clients asked me to leave, hinting at trouble? Without specific threats, without witnesses, it would look like a petty squabble, or even his own paranoia. Coming out of the shower, Michael met Statham in the locker room. The actor nodded to him as if he were an old friend. Good morning, Michael. I see you've decided to come back after all. Good, Michael replied. Yes, I decided not to back down. Commendable. Statham opened his locker. Was there any activity? Michael paused, deciding whether to share his conversation with Kevin. One of them came up, offered to voluntarily resign his membership. Statham raised an eyebrow. And how did you respond? No way, Michael shrugged. But I'm not going to leave just because someone doesn't like my presence. The right decision, Statham nodded. Although I must warn you, such people rarely stop at words. Be prepared for escalation. What do you mean? Michael frowned. They tried to intimidate. It didn't work. Now they can move on to more active actions. Statham spoke calmly, as if discussing the weather. Small dirty tricks, accidental clashes during training, perhaps even damage to personal belongings. Sounds like high school, Michael remarked with a bitter smile. People rarely mature emotionally, Statham replied, especially those who are used to solving problems by force. Michael thought, I could contact the administration. It's certainly worth a try, Statham agreed, but from what I've seen, they're a certain kind of figure here. Regulars, maybe even the club's advertising faces. Yes, it's not the most encouraging prospect, Michael sighed. Statham buttoned his shirt and turned to him. Look, Michael, I understand how you feel, and I admire your decision to stick with it. But be careful. These kinds of conflicts sometimes get out of hand faster than we can imagine. Thank you for your concern, Michael replied sincerely, but I can handle it. It's not the first time I've encountered prejudice. Statham nodded. I have no doubt about it. Just keep me posted if things get worse. Of course, Michael promised, although he wasn't sure he would bother the celebrity with his problems. They left the club together. A nondescript black SUV with tinted windows was waiting for Statham at the entrance. The actor shook Michael's hand. Have a nice day. And remember, sometimes the best defense is a good offense. With these words, he got into the car, which silently disappeared into the traffic flow. Michael was left standing on the sidewalk, thinking about the strange turn his life had taken in recent days. Who would have thought that a simple desire to change the gym would lead to a conflict with local bodybuilders and an acquaintance with a Hollywood star? That evening, when Michael returned home from school, he discovered that his phone was dead. When he plugged it in, he saw several missed calls from an unknown number and one message. When he opened it, Michael felt his blood run cold. On the screen was a photo of his house, his and Sarah's small two-story house in the suburbs of Chicago, and under the photo, a short text, "We know where you live. Last warning." Michael felt his heart pound. These weren't hints or subtle threats anymore. This was outright intimidation, an invasion of his privacy. Someone had found out his address, driven to his house, taken a photo. For what? For a spot in the gym? He showed the message to Sarah when she returned from school. Her reaction was predictable. Oh my God, Mike. We need to call the police. This is no longer a joke. What am I going to tell the police? Michael asked wearily. That I'm in conflict with a group of bodybuilders at the gym, and one of them probably sent me a photo of our house? I have no proof it was them. The number's anonymous. The text does not contain any direct threats. That sounds like a threat to me, Sarah exclaimed, and to any normal person, but not for the police. Michael shook his head. They'll treat it as petty hooliganism. They'll draw up a report that'll be shelved and advise you to be more careful. Sarah sat down next to him on the sofa, taking his hand. What are you going to do? Michael took a deep breath. I don't know. Part of me wants to just give up. Give up this darn membership, find another hall, and forget this whole thing. But the other part, he clenched his fists. The other part is outrage that some cocky idiot thinks he can bully me out of a place I have every right to be. I will support whatever you decide, Sarah said quietly. But please be careful. These people will clearly not stop at little. Michael nodded, then suddenly remembered Statham. You know, Jason said today that things could get worse, like he foresaw it. He's probably seen a lot of this, Sarah said. Maybe we should tell him. He's clearly on your side. I don't want to drag him in any further. Michael shook his head. He's already helped more than anyone could have expected. Besides, he probably has a busy filming schedule. They decided not to take any drastic measures for now, but to increase their vigilance. Sarah suggested installing a simple video surveillance system temporarily, at least a camera at the front door. Michael agreed, although he doubted that it would stop those who were determined to cause serious trouble. The night passed restlessly. Michael woke up every now and then at every rustle, listening to the sounds of the street. In the morning, he decided that he would not go to the Golden Atlas until he had clarified the situation. In the end, Health and safety were more important than principles. He called the club and asked to speak to the manager. After a short wait, a confident female voice came through the receiver. Angela Cortez, manager of the Golden Atlas. How can I help you? Good morning, Michael began. My name is Michael Johnson, and I'm a new member of your club. I have a situation that I'd like to discuss. Of course, Mr. Johnson. Angela's voice was professionally neutral. What situation are we talking about? Michael took a deep breath. I've been experiencing some aggressive behavior from a group of people at your club for the past 2 days. At first, it was verbal harassment and attempts to disrupt my workout, but yesterday it escalated. I received a photo of my home with threatening text. There was a pause on the line. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Johnson. Are you sure that the message came from members of our club? Not 100%, Michael answered honestly, but given the conflict and the nature of the threat, the connection seems obvious. I understand. Angela's voice became a little cooler. May I ask which club members exactly are we talking about? Michael named the 3. After that, the pause became even longer. Mr. Johnson, Angela finally said, the gentlemen you mentioned are long-standing and respected members of our club. Mr. Morrison even trained some of our VIP clients. Without concrete evidence, I cannot take action based on suspicion alone. You do have surveillance cameras, right? Michael asked. Check the footage from the day before yesterday and yesterday. You'll see how these respectable gentlemen deliberately interfered with my training. We can certainly review the footage, Angela agreed, but I must warn you that without overt signs of physical aggression, this will be regarded as normal interaction between members of the club. As for the post with the photo of your home, I'm afraid that's beyond our jurisdiction. If you believe you've been threatened, you should contact the police. Michael felt irritation growing inside him. So you're not going to do anything? I didn't say that, Mr. Johnson, Angela said, her voice taking on a defensive edge. I'll notify security to pay special attention to your interactions with said members. I can also suggest that you reschedule your workouts for a time when the gym is less busy. Or if you prefer, we can consider a refund for any unused time on your membership. So your decision is either to change my schedule or leave. Michael chuckled bitterly. And what about those who create problems? Mr. Johnson, Angela's voice became harsher. Without concrete evidence, I cannot punish clients based on accusations. I have offered you reasonable options for solving the problem. The decision is yours. Michael realized that there was no point in continuing the conversation. He thanked Angela for her time and hung up. The manager's answer was not unexpected, but it still left a bitter taste. The system protected its own, even if these own behaved unacceptably. Michael was distracted all day, having difficulty concentrating on lectures and seminars. Options were spinning in his head. Give in, find another hall, contact the police despite the dubious prospects, talk directly to the club management, bypassing the manager. But none of the options seemed ideal. That evening, when he returned home, he found a small package on his doorstep. No return address, just his name printed on a standard label. Carefully opening the box, Michael found a pair of athletic gloves inside, the kind used for weightlifting. Attached was a note. Tomorrow, 7 a.m., Golden Atlas South parking lot. Just you and me. Let's settle this like men. B. Brad. The biggest and, apparently, the most influential of the 3. He proposed a fight. Direct, without witnesses, one-on-one. Michael looked at the gloves for a long time. They were good quality, his size. Someone had done the research, spent time and money to organize this little production. Sarah found him sitting on the sofa, still clutching the gloves in his hands. What is this? She asked, peering into the box. Michael silently handed her the note. After reading it, Sarah turned pale. You're not going to go, are you? I don't know, Michael answered honestly. This is madness, she exclaimed. This man is probably a professional bodybuilder. He could seriously injure you. I understand the risks, Michael nodded. But what if this is the only way to earn their respect, or at least peace? What if it's a trap, Sarah countered. What if all 3 of you are there? Or if they film the fight and then use it against you? Or if, God forbid, someone has a gun? Michael rubbed his temples. I don't think they'll go that far. They're not criminals, just self-confident hooligans. Just hooligans don't stalk your house and send you threatening messages. Sarah was almost in tears. Please, Mike, don't go. Let's go to the police, to the club's security, to anyone. But don't take that risk. Michael stood up and hugged his wife. Okay, I promise not to do anything stupid. I'll think about what's best to do. At that moment, the doorbell rang. The couple exchanged glances. They weren't expecting anyone, especially at such a late hour. Michael carefully approached the door, looked through the peephole, and was surprised to find Jason Statham behind the door. Good evening, Michael, the actor said as the door opened. Sorry for the late intrusion. May I come in? We need to talk. Michael, stunned, silently stepped aside to let the guest in. Sarah, who had peeked out from the living room, stared in amazement at the celebrity in their modest home. Jason Statham? She said uncertainly. In our house? Sorry to intrude, Mrs. Johnson. Statham nodded politely. But it's urgent. They went into the living room. Statham declined the coffee and got straight to the point. You didn't show up at the club this morning, and I suspected that the situation was developing. I asked around a bit, learned about the threat you had received, and then my, shall we say, informants reported a new development. Did you get the gloves? Michael nodded, pointing to the box. Just a couple of hours ago. Statham took the note, read it, and nodded. Thought so. A classic move, to drag someone into neutral territory, supposedly for a fair fight, but in reality, for reprisal. I've seen this dozens of times. You think they don't plan on a fair fight? Michael asked. Statham chuckled. Fair? No, Michael. People who start with intimidation and threats rarely move on to a fair fight. Chances are all three of you will be there waiting for you, maybe even with a few buddies as backup. That's what I told you, Sarah cried. It's a trap. Most likely, Statham agreed. But it's also a possibility. An opportunity for what? Michael frowned. To solve your problem once and for all, Statham replied. I propose a plan. The next morning at 6:45, Michael parked his car in the Golden Atlas's south lot. This was the part of the lot farthest from the main entrance where employees usually parked. Now at this early hour it was empty, save for a black SUV parked at the far end, with Brad's bulky figure next to it. Michael took a deep breath, trying to calm his pounding heart. Statham's plan was risky, but it was the only way to end the bullying once and for all. He got out of the car, putting on the gloves Brad had sent, and walked over to the waiting bodybuilder. He showed up after all, Brad said with a grin as Michael approached. Honestly, I didn't expect it. I thought professors were more about talking than doing. Where are your friends? Michael asked, looking around. Or are they watching from the car? Brad laughed. Afraid of an ambush, Professor? Don't worry, it's just you and me. A fair fight, one-on-one. I don't need help to teach you a lesson. Michael scanned the parking lot. At first glance, Brad was indeed alone, but something about his self-confidence was alarming. The terms are simple, the bodybuilder continued, stretching his powerful neck. We fight until one gives up. If I win, you don't show up at the Golden Atlas anymore. Ever. If by some miracle you win, we leave you alone. Fair enough, right? And no weapons? Michael asked. No dirty tricks? You're insulting me, Professor. Brad spread his arms, showing that he had nothing on him. Just fists and sportsmanship. Michael nodded. Okay, let's get started. Brad grinned, getting into a fighting stance. With pleasure. Michael also took a stance but was in no hurry to attack. He was well-built, trained regularly, and had even done boxing in his youth. But against a professional bodybuilder who apparently also had martial arts experience, his chances were minimal. Brad lunged first, a testing blow that Michael blocked easily. The second was faster and harder, and though Michael ducked, the air from the fist whistled past his ear. The third punch caught him off guard. Brad suddenly changed tactics, and instead of a straight punch, he threw a side punch. The fist crashed into Michael's ribs, causing a flash of pain. He stepped back, trying to catch his breath. First lesson, Professor, Brad chuckled. Theory won't help in a real fight. Michael didn't answer, focusing on defense. He knew he couldn't win by force. His only chance was to hold out long enough. Brad continued to attack, each blow becoming more precise and powerful. Michael blocked, dodged, but gradually his defense weakened. One blow found its mark, right in the stomach, knocking the air out of his lungs. Michael bent over, and immediately the second blow caught him, in the jaw, sending him to the asphalt. Is that it? Brad asked mockingly, looking at his prostrate opponent. I thought you'd last longer. Michael stood up slowly, spitting out blood. We're not finished yet. A commendable tenacity, Brad chuckled, but a futile one. He moved forward for the final attack, but suddenly stopped when he heard the sound of approaching footsteps. Brad turned to see Jason Statham walking slowly toward them from the edge of the parking lot. "What the heck?" Brad glared at Michael. "You brought reinforcements? That's not fair." "I came alone, as agreed," Michael answered calmly, wiping the blood from his split lip. "But whether it was fair of you to hide Kevin and Ray in the car is an open question." Brad turned pale, then red with anger. "You can't know that." "But I can," Statham interjected, walking up to him. "I wonder how you're going to explain to the surveillance cameras we installed an hour ago that your buddies are in the car, ready to join in as soon as Michael hits the ground." At that moment, the SUV doors swung open and Kevin and Ray actually jumped out, their faces expressing a mixture of anger and confusion. "Brad, he's bluffing," Kevin hissed. "There are no cameras here." "Are you sure?" Statham asked calmly. "Check the lampposts, the bushes, the trash cans. Modern technology allows you to hide a camera anywhere. And by the way, everything that was said and done in the last 10 minutes was recorded and sent to a safe place." Brad looked around frantically, looking for signs of surveillance. "Even if so, it doesn't prove anything. We just arrived together and waited in the car for the result of our conversation with the professor." "Conversation?" Statham raised an eyebrow. "Using fists and threatening phone calls and taking pictures of the house? Interesting way to have a conversation." "You have no proof that we sent the photo?" Ray intervened, but there was no longer the same confidence in his voice. "How about the footage from Michael's house that captured your car slowly driving past?" Statham countered. "Or the location of your phones at the time the text was sent. Modern technology can do wonders, can't it?" The trio looked at each other, their confidence melting away before their eyes. "What do you want?" Brad finally asked, clearly deciding to change tactics. "It's simple," Statham replied. "You leave Michael alone. Completely. No looks, no remarks, no comments. He trains where he wants and when he wants. You behave like civilized people. Otherwise, all the footage goes to the police, the club administration, and, perhaps even worse for you, to social media. Imagine the resonance that a story about 3 bodybuilders persecuting a university professor because of the color of his skin would cause." "We never talked about his race," Kevin protested. "That's slander." "Really?" Statham looked genuinely surprised. "And how do you explain phrases like, 'There is no place for people like you here,' or 'Maybe you should look for a hall for a diverse audience'? Any judge would see obvious racist innuendo here." Brad winced, realizing they were cornered. "Let's say we agree. How can we be sure you won't use these hypothetical recordings later for blackmail?" "You can't," Statham shrugged, "but frankly, you don't have a choice. Besides, I give you my word. If you leave Michael alone, the tapes will never see the light of day." "I'm a man of my word." The 3 exchanged glances. Then Brad, clearly taking the lead, nodded. "Okay, we agree. The professor can train in peace. We won't interfere. And no more messages or visits to his house," Statham added. "No random encounters on the street. No talking behind his back to other members of the club." "Okay," Brad said through gritted teeth. "We get it." "Very well," Statham smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "Then consider the incident closed." Brad motioned to his friends and they headed toward the SUV. As he passed Michael, the bodybuilder paused for a moment. "You're lucky to have friends, Professor. Next time you might not be so lucky." "I don't recommend checking," Michael answered calmly. As the SUV disappeared around the corner, Michael turned to Statham. "Thank you. Although I must admit, I wasn't sure your plan would work." "Bluff is a great power," smiled Statham, "especially when it is backed by a little truth." "So there really are cameras?" Michael was surprised. "One," Statham nodded. "On a lamppost. The rest is creative exaggeration. But they'll never know about it." Michael shook his head. "I'm not sure that will stop them for long. People like that don't like to lose." "Maybe," Statham agreed. "But now they have doubt, uncertainty. They don't know what I'm saying is true and what's not. And that's going to hold them back for a while. And in 2 weeks, filming will be over, and I'll be leaving Chicago. And I'll be left alone," Michael finished his thought. "Not necessarily," Statham said. "In 2 weeks, we'll find a way to ensure your safety on a more permanent basis. Perhaps we should talk to the real owner of the Golden Atlas, rather than the manager who seems overly loyal to his regular customers." Michael nodded. "That makes sense. And thanks again for everything." "You're welcome." Statham replied simply, "I can't stand bullies, in any form." They headed toward their cars. The morning sun was slowly rising over the horizon, filling the parking lot with golden light. Michael felt the pain of the blows he had received, but inside he felt a strange relief. Perhaps this was not the end of the story. Perhaps Brad and his friends would not keep their word. But today, here and now, a small victory had been won. A victory of principle over force, of justice over hooliganism. "You know what I'm thinking?" Michael said as they approached his car. "About how weird life is. I joined a new gym, just hoping for a change of scenery, and then I got caught up in a conflict, got threatened, and met a movie star who came to my rescue. It's like a movie script." Statham chuckled. "Life often writes better scripts than any Hollywood. We just don't always notice it." He extended his hand. "Call me if you have any problems." "Any problems. You have the number." Michael shook the outstretched hand. "Of course, although I hope I won't have to." "Me too," Statham nodded. "Have a nice day, Professor." He turned and walked toward his car, parked in the far corner of the lot. Michael watched him go, thinking about the twists and turns of fate that had brought them together. The world can be a cruel place, full of injustice and prejudice. But sometimes, when you least expect it, there are people who are willing to stand on the side of justice simply because it is right. As Michael got into the car, he thought that perhaps he should write about this experience, not for publication, but simply to preserve the story of how one man with power and influence used it not to dominate, but to protect someone who at that moment needed support. It would be a good story. A story about strength that does not suppress, but protects. About courage that does not shout about itself, but acts. About justice that sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. Starting the engine, Michael caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. A split lip, a bruise on his cheekbone, traces of today's collision, but his eyes looked confident, without fear. He did not retreat, did not allow himself to be intimidated. And this was his own victory, small but significant. Michael put the car in gear and pulled out of the parking lot. There was a new day ahead, and he was going to face it with his head held high. Because true strength isn't in muscles, it's in the ability to stand up for what you believe in, even when everyone else is silent. That evening, when Michael returned home, he found another package waiting for him, a small box delivered by courier. Inside, he found a golden Atlas keycard marked lifetime membership and a short note. "Today, we have officially terminated Angela Cortez for systematically ignoring instances of discrimination in our club. We deeply apologize for the incident and hope that you will continue to use the Golden Atlas services. Sincerely, Richard Goldberg, owner." The envelope also contained Statham's business card, a simple, no-frills card with a phone number and a short handwritten note. "Real strength is not in suppression, but in protection. J.S." Michael looked at the card for a long time, then smiled and carefully put it back in his wallet. Some meetings, even the most unexpected ones, leave an indelible mark on life. A week passed. Michael checked the status of his official complaint to the club administration, which he had finally filed at Sarah's insistence. To his surprise, the application was being considered with unusual seriousness. The bruises on his face gradually faded. The physical pain receded, but the internal fire ignited by the events of the last few days burned brighter and brighter. Every day, coming to the Golden Atlas, he felt glances on him. No longer hostile, but curious, respectful. The story of how a new member of the club stood up to a trio of bodybuilders and achieved justice with the help of a Hollywood star spread like wildfire. Brad and his company now diligently avoided Michael, training in another wing of the building or coming at different times. On the evening of the 7th day, when Michael was finishing his training, an unfamiliar young black guy approached him. "Sorry to bother you," he began hesitantly. "You're Professor Johnson, aren't you?" Michael nodded, wiping away sweat with a towel. "Yes, how can I help you?" "My name is David." The guy was visibly nervous. I wanted to say thank you for what you did." "Thank you?" Michael asked, surprised. "I'm not sure I understand." David glanced around as if checking to see if anyone was listening. "I've been training here for about 3 months, and I've been through the same thing you've been through. The taunts, the accidental pushes, the comments. Brad and his friends, they did that to anyone who didn't fit their idea of the proper Golden Atlas customer." Michael looked closely at the guy, about 20 years old, slim but well-muscled, in simple sportswear without designer labels. Why didn't the administration intervene? Michael asked. Angela was their patron. David smiled bitterly. Brad had some kind of special relationship with her. No one wanted to mess with her. But after what you did, everything changed. Today, the new manager personally apologized to me for the inappropriate behavior of some clients and assured me that it will not happen again. Michael felt a warmth spreading inside him. I'm glad that the situation is changing. Although, to be honest, I wasn't the main character in this story. But you didn't give up. David's eyes shone with genuine admiration. Most people just leave. I thought about leaving dozens of times, but I couldn't afford membership in another decent club. And you fought. With significant support, Michael noted modestly. You know, after your story, 5 people who had previously kept quiet filed official complaints. David continued. It turns out that it wasn't just the coloreds who suffered from those 3. They bullied overweight people, older people, newcomers, anyone they considered unworthy of this place. Things will be different now. Michael extended his hand to the young man. I'm glad I could make a difference, David. I hope your training will be more friendly now. David shook the outstretched hand firmly. Thanks to you, yes. And by the way, I'm going to Northwestern next year. Sociology. Maybe we'll meet on campus. I'll be glad to, Michael answered sincerely. Come to the department. Let's talk about your plans. After David left, Michael stood by the machine for a long time, lost in thought. One small action, one act of resistance, and how many lives had changed for the better. But he could have retreated, could have found another gym, avoided the conflict. Deep thoughts? A familiar voice with a British accent rang out. Michael turned around to see Statham dressed for training. Jason, I thought you had already left. They extended the shooting for another week. The actor shrugged. I decided to drop in before leaving to make sure everything was okay. More than, Michael nodded. I just talked to a guy who thanked me for changing the situation. It turns out I wasn't the only one who suffered from the antics of these 3. Not surprising, Statham nodded. Such people rarely limit themselves to one victim. How are your bruises? They're healing. Michael touched his face carefully. My wife still thinks I should have gone to the police. She may be right, Statham said thoughtfully, but sometimes direct confrontation is unavoidable. It's important to choose the right moment in the right way. They headed toward the free weights area. Suddenly, Michael noticed a familiar figure. Brad was training against the mirrored wall, alone, without his usual companions. When he saw Michael and Statham, he froze for a moment, then demonstratively turned away. Your old friend doesn't look happy, Statham remarked quietly. Not surprising, Michael replied. The word is he's been suspended from coaching at the club. Reputational damage. Well-deserved, Statham shrugged. They began their training, exchanging occasional comments on exercise technique. Between them, there was a comfortable silence between 2 people who do not need extra words to understand each other. Half an hour later, Michael noticed Brad leaving the gym without finishing his workout. His face was filled with poorly concealed rage. As he walked past them, the bodybuilder pretended not to notice their presence, but there was tension in his movements, like a predator forced to retreat. I don't think he's resigned himself to it, Michael said quietly, watching Brad walk away. These types never give in, Statham replied calmly. They lie low, bide their time. But now you know you can fight back. That changes everything. After the workout, they walked out to the parking lot together. It was getting dark. The last rays of the setting sun were painting the clouds orange and pink. Statham stopped by his car. I'm flying out the day after tomorrow. We may not see each other again. It's a pity, Michael answered sincerely. You've taught me a lot these days. I didn't teach you, Statham shook his head. I just reminded you of what you already knew. Sometimes you have to fight for your place, even if the odds are against you. Michael extended his hand. Thank you for everything. Statham shook his hand firmly. Take care of yourself, Professor. And remember, true strength is not in muscles, but in the willingness to stand up for what is right. With these words, he got into the car and drove away, leaving Michael alone with his thoughts in the empty parking lot. 2 weeks later, the Golden Atlas was buzzing like a beehive. Word had spread that it was hosting a charity event featuring several Hollywood celebrities. It was a closed event, for members and specially invited guests only. The goal was to raise money for the Sport Against Discrimination program, a new initiative aimed at creating an inclusive environment in sports clubs across the country. Michael received a personal invitation an elegant gold embossed card delivered by courier. Sarah insisted he go. This is important, Mike, and you should be there, given your role in the changes happening at the club. The evening was in full swing when Michael arrived. The main room of the Golden Atlas had been transformed beyond recognition. The exercise machines had been removed. The space was decorated with fresh flowers and elegant draperies. Buffet tables and a small stage had been set up. Soft music was playing, and guests, club members, local celebrities, businessmen, were chatting, holding glasses of champagne. Michael felt a little out of place in this distinguished company, but a few familiar faces, other members of the club who were now nodding to him, gave him confidence. He spotted David in the crowd, talking to an older gentleman, and walked toward them. Professor Johnson, David exclaimed happily. I'm glad you came. Let me introduce you to Mr. Goldberg, owner of the Golden Atlas chain. An elderly man, elegantly dressed, with piercing eyes, extended his hand. Finally we meet in person, Professor. I have heard a lot about you. I hope not all of this involved unpleasant incidents. Michael smiled, shaking the strong hand. Unfortunately, it was the incident that brought it to my attention, Goldberg replied gravely. But the way you handled it has my deepest respect. Not only did you change the atmosphere in one club, you helped me recognize a systemic problem that we had ignored for too long. I didn't do anything special, Michael answered modestly. On the contrary, Goldberg countered, you stood up when most people would have walked away. That takes a lot of courage. And today's event is just the beginning of changes we plan to implement across the entire network. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of a microphone. The club's new manager came up to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Thank you all for participating in our charity evening. Today we have gathered to support an important initiative, the Sports Against Discrimination program. And I am very pleased to invite to the stage the person without whom this event would not have taken place, Jason Statham. The audience erupted in applause. Michael watched in amazement as Statham, elegant in a black suit, walked onto the stage. The actor looked calm and collected as always. Good evening, he began when the applause died down. I'm not a big fan of long speeches, so I'll keep it short. Sports should unite people, not divide them. Fitness should be available to everyone who wants to become better, stronger, healthier, regardless of skin color, age, physical ability, or social status. The room erupted in applause again. Statham raised his hand, calling for silence. Recent events in this club have shown that even in the 21st century, we still face prejudice and discrimination. But they have also shown that one person standing up for justice can make a difference. Today, I would like to introduce you to that person, Professor Michael Johnson, whose courage inspired the creation of our program. All eyes turned to Michael. He felt the color rise in his face. Michael, please join me on stage, Statham invited. Michael walked hesitantly onto the stage to the applause of the guests. Statham shook his hand, then unexpectedly hugged him, quietly saying, Surprise, I hope you don't mind. I'm stunned, Michael answered honestly. Statham turned to the audience. The program's Sport Against Discrimination will work in 3 directions. Firstly, training the staff of sports clubs to recognize and prevent discrimination. Secondly, creating a transparent system for handling complaints. And thirdly, special scholarships for low-income groups of the population to make fitness truly accessible to everyone. Michael listened in disbelief. What had started as a personal conflict had turned into a massive initiative that could change the lives of thousands of people. And I am pleased to announce, continued Statham, that the first contribution to the program fund, $500,000, has already been made. Half from me personally, half from the Golden Atlas Network. The hall exploded with applause again. Michael stood stunned, speechless. Statham turned to him. Professor Johnson, we would like to invite you as a consultant for the educational direction of the program. Your experience in sociology and personal understanding of the problem would be extremely valuable. Of course, if you are interested, we can discuss the details of a more formal collaboration later. Michael felt a lump in his throat. He looked out into the room at dozens of faces, all looking at him with anticipation and respect. Among them, he spotted David, smiling and giving him a thumbs up. Next to him stood Sarah, his wife, whom he hadn't expected to see here, her eyes shining with tears of pride. And suddenly, among the guests, he noticed a familiar face. Brad was standing against the far wall, his expression impenetrable. Their eyes met for a moment, and Michael thought he saw something like respect flash in the bodybuilder's eyes. Or was it just a trick of the light? Statham handed him the microphone. "A few words, Professor?" Michael took the microphone, took a deep breath, and collected his thoughts. I didn't prepare a speech, and I never thought I'd be here, in the spotlight. 2 weeks ago, I was just a guy who wanted to train in peace, without being bullied because of the color of his skin." He paused, taking a breath. "I could have walked away, find another gym, avoided conflict, and honestly, that's what I've done many times in my life when faced with prejudice. Step back to avoid making the situation worse. But something changed. Maybe I just got tired of stepping back. Maybe having someone willing to stand by my side gave me strength." He nodded toward Statham. "But what I've learned with absolute clarity is that sometimes you have to fight, not with your fists, but with your principles, to stand your ground when you know you're right. And if my humble fight for a spot in the gym led to the creation of a program that will help thousands of people," his voice wavered, "then it was all worth it." The room erupted in applause. Michael saw Sarah wiping away tears. David applauded enthusiastically. Even Brad, after a moment's hesitation, slowly raised his hands to join in the ovation. Statham took the microphone again. "Thank you, Professor. Your words are the best proof that sometimes it only takes one person willing to stand up and say, 'Enough,' to make a difference." He turned to the audience. "And now I propose that we raise our glasses to a new beginning, to a world where sport becomes a bridge, not a barrier, to a future without discrimination." The guests raised their glasses. Michael, still stunned, stood on stage, feeling warmth spreading inside. He had never sought public recognition, never dreamed of becoming a symbol of the fight for justice. He simply wanted to train in the world. But sometimes life takes us down unexpected paths, turning small personal battles into something much more meaningful. As he walked down the stage, he found himself in Sarah's arms. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered through her tears. "You've changed not only your life, but the lives of so many others." "I never thought it would turn out like this," Michael admitted. "It feels like a dream." "The most important changes often start small," Goldberg said, walking up to him. "With one person who decides, 'I'm not going to back down today.' Professor, I hope you'll take Jason up on his offer. We need people like you." Michael glanced at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. "I'll think about it, Mr. Goldberg. I'll think about it very seriously." "Excellent," the chain owner smiled. "And now, if you don't mind, some other guests would like to greet you. It seems you've become a local celebrity." And indeed, people were already heading towards Michael. Club members he had only seen briefly before, now wanting to shake his hand, introduce themselves, express support. In the midst of this impromptu reception, Michael noticed Brad approaching. The bodybuilder walked alone, his face set in determination. Sarah tensed next to her husband. The guests parted, creating a small corridor between the two men who had once been adversaries. Brad stopped a few steps away from Michael, straightened up to his full height. "Professor Johnson," he began formally, "I'd like to—" He paused, clearly struggling with himself. "I'd like to apologize. The way I behaved, it was unacceptable. I'm not looking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that I realize my mistake." The room fell silent. All eyes were on the scene, an unexpected act of humility from a man known for his pride. Michael looked closely into the bodybuilder's eyes, looking for signs of insincerity, but saw only fatigue and, perhaps, a glimmer of real remorse. "I accept your apology," Michael replied reservedly, realizing that forgiveness would not come immediately, if at all. The bodybuilder nodded, then hesitantly extended his hand. Michael hesitated for a few seconds before shaking it. It wasn't forgiveness, more an acknowledgement of the possibility of a new beginning. The handshake was brief, but its symbolic value was enormous. When their hands separated, Brad's gaze was a mixture of embarrassment and wounded pride. He nodded again and quickly retreated, blending into the crowd. Statham, who had been watching the scene from the side, approached Michael. "Impressive. Do you think he's sincere?" "Not completely," Michael answered honestly. "More like forced by circumstances, but at least it's the beginning of a dialogue." "Sometimes starting a dialogue is all it takes," Statham said. "Honesty can come later, with awareness and time." The evening went on around them. Music, conversation, laughter. But Michael stood in the center of it all, feeling strangely calm. His life had changed in the past few weeks, taking an unexpected turn. A simple trip to the gym had become a journey that had led him to this moment. A moment of recognition, respect, and the opportunity to make a difference in the world. Sometimes the hardest trials lead to the most unexpected discoveries, he thought, looking at the people around him. And sometimes you just have to gather up your courage and take the first step, even if the path seems insurmountable. Statham lightly touched his shoulder. "What are you thinking about, Professor?" Michael smiled. "About strength, real strength, the kind that doesn't suppress but protects, the kind that doesn't destroy but creates." Statham nodded in understanding. "That power was always within you. You just needed to remember it." In that moment, standing among people gathered for a common cause inspired by his personal struggle, Michael Johnson understood a simple truth. There is nothing more powerful than a person who decides to stand up and say no to injustice, no matter how small or large. And that power is within each of us, waiting for the moment when we find the courage to use it. There were voices, laughter, music all around. But Michael seemed to see through the festive bustle. He saw the future, where the small spark of his resistance flared into a flame of change, lighting the way for those still standing in the shadows of fear and uncertainty. And at that moment, he finally realized completely, it is not the size of the enemy that determines the outcome of the battle, but the strength of your spirit and your willingness to stand up for the truth, even when everyone else is silent.